I'm going to give everyone a couple more minutes. We're right nearing 3 o'clock, so I'm going to give a few more minutes just in case we have some stragglers join. We will just go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome to the January ARPA Community Engagement Meeting. I'm Meredith Martin, Deputy Director of Budget and Performance Management. I'd also like to recognize that we have Councilmember Larson here today. I would also like to recognize other city staff, Scott Tesh, the Director of Budget and Performance Management, as well as some representatives of the United Way of Forsyth County. We have Debbie Wilson, Chief Impact Officer, and Usha David.
Everyone.
Let me go on and share my screen and I'll start with the presentation. All right. So maybe if I could get it. So just a couple of housekeeping items. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the city's YouTube station. Please do not unmute yourself until the end of the session when we'll open it up for questions and comments. At that point, please use the raise your hand feature and we'll call on you as we see you, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Throughout the meeting, feel free to use the chat function to provide your questions and comments, and staff will respond. So what's been approved by City Council so far with the ARPA funds? A little over $1.3 million has been allocated to the community violence intervention programs. We also have $100,000 to council eviction diversion programming. We've approved $1.5 million to premium pay for city essential workers. And now for the focus of this meeting would be the $3 million to recovery grants for small businesses and nonprofits within social services, travel, tourism, hospitality, and the arts. So the recovery grants program fits within the first federal objective of the coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds, which is to aid those that have had negative impacts, negative economic impacts from the pandemic. So that's where these funds are focusing on. So recovery grants are for 3 entity types, and that's small businesses, nonprofits for social services, and then nonprofits with travel, tourism, hospitality, and the arts. The goal is to provide assistance to those that have been negatively impacted by the pandemic, especially those that are in arrears or behind on mortgage, rent, lease, and utility payments. The total program appropriation for the Recovery Grants program is $3 million. $1 million is being funded to each entity type within the program with maximum award of $25,000. So for the program minimum criteria, for small businesses, You must be independently owned. Chains and franchises are not eligible. You can have no more than 25 full-time eligible employees or the equivalent of that. For the two nonprofit entity types, you have to have an organizational budget under $1 million, and that's not including pass-through assistance provided from other sources to recipients. You must also have board approval to apply, and you must have documentation to show you are serving a qualified census tract, QCT, or a community with a similar demographic in terms of income to QCTs. For all entity types, you must be located within the city corporate limits. You must be in business and fully functioning on or before January 1st, 2020, and you must be behind on your mortgage, rent, lease, utilities at the time of the application, with obligations incurred before the City Council approval of this program, which was November 22nd, 2021. So the grants will be awarded in a pooled lottery approach. If you meet the minimum eligibility criteria, you will be entered into one of two rounds. The first round will be small business and nonprofits that meet the minimum criteria and are in or serving QCTs. If more than 25 applications for any entity type are received, applications will be placed in a lottery for award. Those not selected in the lottery will be moved into round two, which also is open to entities beyond QCTs that are in tracts that are similar income demographics. So, how to apply for the Recovery Grants Program. I'm going to allow the United Way to walk through this, Ms. Usha David, through their EC Impact web portal. So let me stop sharing. I will pass it over to Usha.
Thanks, Meredith. So unfortunately today I won't be able to show my face, you guys, because my webcam is acting up, but I'm looking forward to walking you through the process and giving you a little sneak peek about what the platform looks like so you guys will have a little bit more familiarity with the system. So I'm going to share my screen. You should be able to see right now this sign-in page for EC Impact. And we have a unique login. So basically you have to make sure that you put in this unique login before moving forward. I think it might be helpful if I put that in the chat for you guys. So I'll just push enter here. So you can directly access that through the link, but you page where it's linked there as well. So it's important, if you don't already have an EC Impact account or you haven't worked with us before, that you actually take the time to create an EC Impact account. So once you're on our unique link page, you're going to click here to create a new EC Impact account. And what that will do will essentially bring you to this landing page with more information about the Recovery Grants Program. Basically, Meredith already walked us through kind of what the criteria was, but we also wanted to give you guys a chance to overview some of the main information, because once you create your account, it'll essentially ask you to answer some qualification information so that you don't get prompted to move to the application if you don't have all of your materials. So once you see this landing page, you're going to actually click next, and it will take you to a page to ask you for your EIN number. So just be prepared to have that at the ready, because without that, it won't let you move to the next step. But once you enter this information, it'll take you to the qualification page. So this is the back end area, but essentially you'll be seeing a handful of questions. So just make sure that you're qualified to move forward into the application process. And that will ding me that you've actually put in your pre-qualification material, and then I'll allow you into the full application stage. So you just have to make sure that you're prepared to answer these key questions about if you're qualified to apply for the application, and then I will be prompted to move you forward to the full application. So it's important that you make sure you create your account information, answer all of the qualification criteria questions, and then wait for me to prompt you to the next section. So I actually want to give you a chance to see what it looks like on your end. So I created a test agency account. And so I'm going to log in as what it would look like to apply as an applicant. So United Way runs a series of applications and processes. So when you actually log into your account, you won't see all of these processes. What you'll see is down here, the 2021 COVID-19 recovery funding application. And essentially what you see on this landing page is just reiterating all of the grants information, the information that Meredith just covered about the process and the criteria in order to qualify. But essentially, it gives you also a lot more detail about the deadlines, what it takes to actually move forward into the application and make sure that you're actually saving your information as you move forward. And so the application is broken into two key sections. So there's a general information section, and there's actually the more programmatic specific information. And the general information questions are basically just background information about your application, whereas the specific kind of program questions are about like what information the amount of money you're looking for each of the sections. So that could be for rental, for water and sewer, for gas, propane, electric, internet, and other if it's not already listed. So I'll actually click on, for instance, the general information section. And it's just important that as you see through each of these areas that you answer them and make sure you take care to answer them completely. If you're not ready to actually complete and save the application, you'll just have to notice that there's different ways to save. So there's save my work and save my work and return to the previous page, which is the landing page. And save my work. Oh, go ahead.
This is Scott. I don't know if we're seeing the same thing that you're seeing on your screen. We're still seeing the EC Impact like dashboard that you have, or at least I am. I'm not sure if everyone else is still seeing that as well. So
it might be because it's a pop-up. Let me see if there's another way to share the pop-ups. Thank you for telling me.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say the application doesn't look like this one. We've seen it before. So this is just the back end dashboard. Let's make sure that's not.
Let's see if there's a way to do a new share. Okay, here we go. I had to change the panel. Share this. Can you see it now? Okay. My apologies. Didn't know the pop-up made it different, but I'll go back to the landing page so you guys can see it. Okay. So this is the overview page that I was initially talking about after the qualification section. So basically, once you get prompted for me that you've met all of the qualification criteria, you'll be able to use all of your sign-in information to get to the agency page, where you won't be able to see all of these different processes. The only one that you'll be seeing is the one relevant to the recovery grants program. So you don't have to worry about choosing the right one, but it's called 20. And can you guys still hear me? Okay, great. So I was talking about earlier, there's two main sections. There's a general information section down here, and then there's information section specific to what requests you're making relevant to rental, water, gas, electric, internet, and other, if that still applies. So just make sure that whenever you go into each of these sections, and as you're answering, if you're not quite ready to submit this section, you'll just be saying save my work or save my work and return to the previous page. If you say save my work and mark as completed, you won't be able to go and make any more changes. I can go in and reset your account, but just so you won't have to deal with the back and forth, just make sure if you're just at a place where you're editing and still thinking about questions that you just choose one to be above. Is there a question or someone needs to be in? Okay. So there's different ways that you can flip through the application. The easier way is just to scroll to the top and switch forms. But essentially, you just want to make sure you finish the general information and just save your work if you're still thinking about some of those answers, and taking care to go also to the attachment section within that, because this is where the required documentation around the W-9, the Secretary of State ID documentation is also there. And you'll just choose a file here. And you'll just pick something from within your attachment section and make sure that you save and upload attachments. So if anyone's having any trouble with technology or things like this, I just want you guys to know that you can reach out to me for technical assistance. I can actually go alongside with you and see what you're looking at if you're maybe feeling a little nervous about if you're going to be able to save these correctly. But just take care to remember that you can just say save and save it, mark as complete. It's more that you're done with that section. So once you actually finish with the agency section, you're going to go to the next section, which is specific to your requests for funding. And the funding request narrative is kind of the qualitative information around, describing why you're asking for funds, giving you a little bit more of the information in the background about where you're leasing or which propane company. And we like to separate those from qualitative versus quantitative sections. So once you answer all the pertinent information, you'll just make sure that you save versus save and mark as completed as if you're actually completely done. Once you've done each of the sections that are relevant to you, you'll just have to make sure that you go to the attachment section as well. So the funding and assistance request attachments is pretty thorough, so we'll just make sure you attach them at the attachment section. So you can see that these are relevant to each of the months. So you might not have to save for all of these, just for the ones that are relevant to you. And once you've done that, you'll save and upload your attachments, and you have the option of going back and changing any of the attachments if you need to. So I'm just going to return to the overview page, but essentially you'll start at not started, in progress once you start editing these different sections. And once you've saved and marked as completed for each of the sections that you need to, it will move to ready to submit. And then you'll be able to see that it turns green here, it's fully submitted once you process all of the applications and push submit. And I will get a prompt saying that your application is complete. I know it's a lot, but just know that I have my contact information that I'll put into the chat as well. So if you have any other questions or would like to have one-on-one kind of support, that I'm here for that. Meredith or Scott, is there anything else you think I should cover?
No, I guess what I would say is, and we talked about the city staff with United Way in putting this together. The application seems long as you run through it like that, but it's essentially because it's asking you if you have rent, mortgage, or utilities arrears for the last 18 months or whatever that period is. So it looks cumbersome, but it gives you basically the opportunity to just submit those invoices or those numbers for those specific months as backup. So let's say for those who are looking to submit an application, don't look at this and say, oh, look at all that information. I think once you get into it and you start to fill it out, you'll realize it's a very simple but looks difficult process. So again, United Way is there for anything that you have questions about or any technical assistance that you need. The city will also be setting up in the coming weeks an on-site technical assistance workshop. We are still getting the location and date for that, but we'll make it publicly available, and that will probably be about 3 weeks out. So we will ensure that we make ourselves available to the public if there are folks who are really struggling or really would like a little bit of extra assistance. So Uche, I really appreciate that, and again, open it up if anybody has any questions, but I do think it's once you get into it, going to be a little bit simpler of a process, particularly on the portal side where you log in. So I think it also, because you're seeing the back end dashboard, you see a little bit here in the screen share that the average person won't see. It won't be quite as cumbersome.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I see we have a couple questions. So, and they're probably likely with the system. So I'll go on and let you ask your question. So I'll go with Courtney James first.
Hi, my question was for the utilities. I guess that's not a system question. It's more so you said other utilities. So I'm trying to figure out what other utilities do you mean? If there was an option for general liability or insurance, or do you consider that operating expense?
So I would say we consider the insurance component to be an operating expense. The other utilities piece was created in case there was something that someone could make an argument for as a utility. We included internet on there, and so there were things like that we didn't want to miss. If someone enters other utility, it will go through a process where the United Way and the city will both look at it to ensure that that is something that could be considered a utility. So it is there just in case and to ensure that we didn't miss anything on the front end, but insurance costs are going to be considered an operating expense for this purpose.
Thank you.
Councilmember Larson.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry, it took a minute to get unmuted. I'm working off of a laptop this afternoon, and this document is really dense. I mean, there's a lot to it, and the printing is rather small. My specific question really relates to the establishment of an account with United Way, the very front end questions that are being asked and the material that's being requested. Could you go briefly through that again? It looked to me like there's a lot of work to be done even to set up an account to begin to process the grant application.
Yeah, I can go through it again, but essentially it just asks for your EIN number, your name of the organization, the address. Let me just try to share again. Make sure I'm right screen. Okay. So there's just kind of practical information that EC Impact and United Way needs to make sure that you're a legitimate organization. And so just creating an account, we wanted people to make sure that we weren't asking people who maybe didn't have the right information to even have to go through the trouble of the application. And so after the EIN number, I would have to put in one for you to actually see the page.
I'm sorry, EIN is what?
It's the employee information number, I think. Employer information number.
Councilmember Larson, that's basically your tax ID for a business.
The tax ID number? Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when you put that in, it auto-populates for you, your address of the organization, et cetera, and then it just takes you to the questions that I showed you earlier. So I think I still have that up. So these are questions that you should already be prepared to answer because they're just reiterating the criteria that was on that main page that Meredith was talking about. Can you attest to seeking recovery grant program funding for being behind on mortgage, rent, and lease? And this is essentially just a yes or no question. So my hope was just to make these pretty quick to get through. Is your business nonprofit within the city limits? That's a yes or no question. So hopefully it won't take you more than 5 minutes just for us to make sure that you're not applying if you're not in the right fit. So I didn't want people to get frustrated and go through the whole application process only to find out that they don't actually fit the criteria to apply. Another one is, does your nonprofit have organization budget under 100 million for nonprofits? So yes or no question there as well. If you're in the QCT with the link there, yes or no question. So these should be pretty brief just before you get to the application. So it's not at all something that's a lot to manage before you get to the questions, if that makes sense.
So these are preview questions for the main application? Is that what?
Yeah, these are the pre-qualifying questions, just to make sure that you actually are able to apply. Because if you don't qualify, then we didn't want to make people frustrated and have to get through the more cumbersome process of submitting in forms and the budget request forms if they didn't fit.
Does your program allow these questions to be expanded for a 70-year-old eye? Instead of eyes, a 0.8 font is not particularly useful. I mean, it's difficult.
It's
enough.
hard because the system has a certain kind of script, but you yourself on your own screen can widen the view. It's not something I can change on the back end.
Okay, just as long as you have the ability to open it up a little bit, move the font up a little bit larger, I think that would be useful.
Okay, I'll look into that, see if I can do that. I don't know, Debbie, if you had something you wanted to add.
Yes, I was just going to add, Councilman Larson, it is not nearly this tiny when you are actually in the application. I'm in it on my laptop while we're having this call. It is much, much bigger. The print is much bigger, but yes, it is much, much bigger than this. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Debbie. Is there anything else that you would like to see, Councilman Larson, that would be helpful, or any other questions that we have time for?
No, I'm just a firm believer in simplicity is the soul of wit, and if we can make sure that these applications aren't intimidating to the people that are maybe not as technologically savvy or not used to the technology, and as long as you provide the backup support for them. I mean, these are $20,000 grants. It's not like we're going for $150,000 grants. So, I don't want to make it incredibly difficult for people to get to the money. I mean, we've already delayed getting the money out, I think, for quite a while between the time people saw that we were receiving the 51 million to the time they started expecting to get the money into their coffers. And so I want to try to keep it simple and streamlined as possible.
Totally understandable.
And I want to thank Regina Craven from the United Way. She also passed along their application checklist, which I've included in the chat now. And that can also be found on the city's CLFRF website regarding recovery grants. Any other questions, comments?
We're going to talk about schedule timelines at some point.
I was getting ready to say, so for next steps, just related to ARPA funding in general, as far as recovery grants go, the applications are open through February 18th. And 2 weeks after that is when we hope to begin, to award and distribute the funds. So that would be very late February, early March is the timeline for that. As far as other programming within ARPA funding, the transformational phase of funds, City Council is actually evaluating that now, and we hope to have more information out about that in early spring. So that's kind of the next steps of what we have on the docket coming up. Our next community engagement meeting is scheduled for February 16th at 6 p.m. We're trying to rotate the times a bit so that everyone has various opportunities to participate wherever they can. And all information can be found at cityofws.org/CLFRF. And we update that webpage quite frequently. So.
Hey, excuse me, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, my name is Brandon with the venue. Quick question for the hospitality piece. Would an event center fall up under the hospitality location or that thing?
Can you repeat your question one more time? I'm sorry.
Would an event space qualify as hospitality?
That would be my understanding, yes.
Okay, so being that we do events where people bridal showers, different things like that, just wanted to make sure it falls under that hospitality. You won't normally think of it as being hospitality, but I just wanted to make sure that we would fall up under that category, being that we are an event space.
I'm going to let Mr. Tesh handle that.
So the answer to that would be yes, submit your application.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, if there are no other, yes, go ahead.
John Larson again. So the applications are filled out and turned in by February, what, February 18th?
February 18th, yes, sir.
18th, they're turned in by, and then they go into review. Who is reviewing these applications?
They go through a pooled lottery approach. So if you check all the boxes as far as the criteria, you would be put in a lottery for potential awarding of grant funds.
So, okay, so if you qualify, then you're in a lottery for the selection. And the first 25 are qualified census tract applications, basically. Is that the way it's going to work?
Not necessarily the first 25, but the first drawn out of the lottery. Not the first 25 submitted, but the first 25 potentially drawn out of the lottery.
So we have 100 applications, of 50 of them that are outside of the qualified census tracts, and the other 50 are inside the qualified census tracts. Those for out of that pool of 50, 25 will be selected as the first round.
Correct.
Then the remaining 25 will be thrown in with the other 50, and you have 75 that are going to be selected out of that. I mean, however many we have money holds up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, I greatly appreciate everyone for participating. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or the United Way. We're here to help hopefully make this application process as easy as possible. And we look forward to the program kicking off today. Thank you all.
Thank you.